Well, greetings and salutations, folks. I hope everyone is doing well and welcome to today's upload. Before we jump on into it, a couple quick links. As many of you may know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below, the merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman, Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. These audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost a cent. Click the like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads that I put out daily, click the bell icon. And folks, please leave a comment and share this video. Why? Well, because these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. They definitely do matter and they are appreciated. And with that, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to today's upload, shall we? Okay, guys, so I have just a slew of experiences to share with you today. Also, I received an email yesterday, and immediately after reading it, I knew I had to show it to my dad. As many of you who have been with the channel know, my dad retired from the Navy. He was part of the Brownwater Navy in Vietnam. He worked a couple of years with intelligence. Then retired and then just left it. Never talked about it. Never really did much. But I needed to bring this to him because I wanted to get his opinion on it. And it is 100% cryptid related, but it's something I normally don't talk about except for Saturday Nightmares Live. And I'm going to share that with you a little bit later on. It goes in that category of Dulce, alien agenda, but it doesn't, because it's absolutely, if it is true, it's friggin' terrifying. So let's get into some encounters right now. And towards the end of the upload, I'll share that with you guys. Today's first encounter. My fiance and I went on a 3-day trip to Gatlinburg, and we spent our days in the mountains hiking and spending time in and around the national park. One night, at around midnight, trying to get as much time as we could in the mountains, we decided to take an hour drive from our hotel room up the mountain to an overview/lookout type of spot, right on the top of said mountain, to see if we could catch an awesome look at the stars, because there is a lot of light in Gatlinburg at night. Driving up there, neither of us noticed anything off other than the mountain winds were a little spooky at night. Being from Florida, it's just a little unfamiliar. But as soon as we get to where we are going, her and I jump out of the car. I'm overwhelmed with this vile, oppressive feeling outside of me. But not wanting to make my fiance uncomfortable, I don't react to it much. The wind is absolutely roaring, and unfortunately we could not see any stars due to the cloud cover. So I tell her I'm going to step to the side, take a leak, and we can get back to the hotel room. As soon as I get 10 feet away, I get this strange feeling of extreme vulnerability and detachment from everything around me, almost as though I am miles from the nearest person, but obviously I'm only feet away from my fiance. I turn around and walk back to the car, and I heard something off to my right. Instinctively, I look over, and I see something, roughly the shape of a human and a dog, but the size of a bear, kind of hop over this rail about 200 feet away. I quickly got back to the car and ushered my fiancée in, still not trying to scare her, or at least show her how scared I was. But she asked if I was all right, and my reaction was a dead giveaway. I jumped in the car and sped off. Never in my life had I ever experienced anything like this, and never in my life have I really had a reason to be made so uncomfortable of just being outside, but I truly believe that I did see something unnatural that night. A second encounter. My grandmother's property is settled all the way back in the woods at the end of a long, unpaved road in West Virginia. Along with being comically bumpy, it is also has a history of being haunted, and it has passed between family members over the years. I myself was somewhat skeptical of these tales, not because I'm not a believer in the paranormal, no, but because my uncle and dad are bullshitters. Until one night, a year ago. Back then I lived with my grandmother, down at the end of the road, and at the time I did not own a car. As such, my boyfriend had to walk to my house from the entrance of the road, since his parents did not want to risk damaging their vehicles on the aforementioned bumpy road. Now mind you, this road is a good 20-minute walk from the beginning to the end, completely overgrown with brush and trees, and has a puddle every other step. So more than often, I would meet him halfway and walk him back to the entrance once he went home. That night, when we were walking back to the entrance, I decided to tell him about the property's haunted history. From the silver buried on the four corners of the property to appease a supposed spirit, to the knocking on the corners at the night. I spilled every tale I had ever heard. Now, unlike me, he is generally afraid of such tales, as he himself had once had an experience very similar, albeit much more terrifying, to the one I was about ready to have. He warned me not to do one thing: do not whistle at night. Now, a thing to know about me, I'm a habitual whistler, and I tend to do it without even thinking about it. So, of course, on my way back, I began singing a tune. That particular night, it was unusually bright outside for being so late. The sky was still a dull blue, and there was a hardly shadow despite being well past 8:30. I had gotten to the quarter mark of the road, an almost gateway of brush on the small ridge going further in, when I heard something, a yell, that very distinct sound like an old man. Later, once I got home, I had realized there was a word in that yell: help. At the time, I didn't think too much about it, which, yes, was especially dumb of me. I'd love to pull out every excuse under the sun, but I was feeling very stupid that night. Now that I've had time to think about it, I've noted two things. One, there is no possible way there could have been an elderly man on or near our road. My grandmother is the only person that lives at the end of this road. Second, as I mentioned, was the word in the yell, help. My boyfriend, after hearing the experience, said that it was meant to be a lure. For what? Me? Death? All that fun stuff? As I walked, I got to the halfway mark, a field of dead yellow grass and a single fallen tree on the left-hand side. I had seen it hundreds of times before. I grew up here, and every time I thought, why is that tree still there? As I took my curious look at the tree, I noticed something. Someone or something was there. To this day, I don't understand what I saw. Was it a cryptid, a monster, a demon? Standing a good 30 feet from the tree was, honest to God, and what I can only describe as this pale white humanoid. A simple rounded pillar of white, nearly 8 feet tall, and as still as the tree before it, it stood there, and it saw me, I know it did. Its black eyes and strange face. I had never truly known fear before that night. I froze in place and felt like a mouse beneath the cat's paws, caught and hopeless. Faster than I could blink, it ducked behind the tree and stayed there. 30 feet, traversed in under a second. Once it was behind the tree, it stayed there, and I could move again. The sensible among you probably think I ran. Well, I didn't. I didn't want to get its attention. 10 minutes of absolute silence and paranoia as I walked, utterly terrified. I got home and sat there on my grandmother's little red couch, and I smoked a cigarette. My grandmother looked over at me and said, "You look like you seen a ghost." Well, I don't know if it was a ghost that I saw, but it was definitely something that didn't want me around. Or maybe it did. I don't know. So, interestingly enough, yesterday's upload, I was talking about the Appalachia and like the haints, or spirits, catamounts, and it's that old school kind of lingo that the old timers used back then, and it pretty much described everything. I think that young woman saw a crawler, and there's a lot of strange experiences of people saying they hear this word help in their yells and such. Some people call them skinwalkers. Unless you're in Navajo land, it's a shapeshifter. But, the more research people do, the more we realize that fiction is based from fact. And I truly believe about mimics. I truly believe there are something out there that mimics humans and mimics things that we do to lure us away from the safety of a trail, the safety of a side of a road, a parking lot. As of 2 days ago, when I was up to where Tom Ezek disappeared and blowing the shofar, people have described like these mimic-like creatures as being able to morph into what we look like. And I know that in the creepypasta world, they're kind of called flesh gates. I just think they're just evil, like a demon. And, or maybe crawlers possess that kind of ability. I don't know. It's just the more you research and the more you hear, the creepier shit gets. And without having an explanation, I could deal with Bigfoot, Dogman. I sort of could deal with crawlers. Once I started to think, oh, well, the government/alien agenda created these things as like a security or as some sort of weapon to keep people away from deep underground military base entrances and other things, or abduction tools. But when you think about portals and what's in them and what comes out of them, that's where things mess me up a little bit. Like, that's when I do get a little nervous about being out in the woods. And I'll tell you what, when I do go up where Tom Ezek disappeared, I don't think about Bigfoot or Dogman. I honestly think about portals. I honestly anticipate someday seeing something. Some sort of portal, some sort of wavy kind of whatever, and a creature that I can't explain. And I only hope that when that happens, that I get it on video and I get away. Anyway. Today's third experience. Before I start out, Jeff, I need to remain anonymous. I have a very good job in Kentucky, and I do not need my story getting out to them. I just watched the episode about a man killed in Clay County, Kentucky. I currently live in Harrogate, Tennessee, but lived one summer in Blackie, Kentucky with my parents separated. Blackie is in Letcher County, which isn't far from Clay County. Back in June, a woman was killed by an unknown animal on Doty Creek, just up the road from Blackie. I have an aunt that lived on Doty Creek and spent a lot of time there as a kid. It is a pretty good-sized hollow with big mountains on each side and a creek running right down the middle. There is a healthy population of black bear there, but I did not see a bear attacking someone and dragging them over a bank to a creek and just leaving them there. Usually, if a black bear attacks, it is either to defend its young or to eat. I truly believe that it was a Dogman that attacked her. The summer after my 8th grade year, my mom and I moved to Blackie. My mom's sister and her husband had bought a house down the lane from theirs just to keep the riffraff from living out there. My parents split up. They let my mom and I live there rent-free. The property was on the side of a mountain, so you would drive up a short, steep, curvy one-lane road to get to the homes. My aunt's house was first, and ours was just over a small hill and a curve from theirs. You couldn't see each other's homes from outside. In between the two homes up on the hill, there used to sit an old house. My uncle tore it down and took a dozer and leveled it off to put a play area and a trampoline for my cousins. He built a 4-foot berm on two sides of it to keep the kids from falling down the steep embankment to the lane below. Every morning I would eat breakfast and head down to Blackie to the basketball court. I spent most of my day there and usually would spend the evenings at my best friend's house at the bottom lane that I lived on. I usually didn't leave his house until well after dark. It was always a bit spooky walking up the lane on the side of the mountain at night, but I never really got scared until this happened. I made it to the top of the lane, where up on the hill, the trampoline in the berm was right above me to my left. I got a feeling to stop and look up at the berm, and there it stood, propped against the berm. All I could see was it from waist up. It had its hands on the berm, propped up the way we would if we were leaning on a table with our hands. It looked like a very light gray, almost white wolf, but part of one of its ears was kind of flopped over. It had to be at least 7 to 8 feet tall because the berm only came up to its waist. Remember, the berm itself is 4 feet. I locked eyes with it, and we just stared at each other. It never snarled, nor made a noise. It just looked at me like it was trying to decide what to do next. Suddenly, something told me to run. I went into shock, disbelief, from what I was seeing to pure terror in an instant. I took off like a rocket, never looking back. My mom and I would always enter the door on the side of the house, since it faced the driveway. There was a small covered porch with about 5 concrete steps leading up to it. I had to run about 100 meters to the house from where we had locked eyes. My mom would always leave that side door unlocked for me, but for some reason she had locked it tonight. When I got to the porch, I cleared all 5 steps and landed right at the door. Upon seeing the door was locked, I started beating on it and yelling to my mom to let me in. All of a sudden, the door swung open, and my mom looked behind me, and the color left her face. She had a look of pure terror. At this point, I still hadn't looked back. I was too afraid to, thinking that it was going to be right behind me. My mom grabbed me by my shoulder and jerked me into the house, slamming the door. I went straight to my room and loaded an old .30-30 and a .22 and just sat there. If this thing wanted to attack me and my mom, it could have easily done it. My mom died back in 2013, and we never spoke of it again. Not even that night. We both just pretended nothing happened and went on with our lives. I will always wonder why it didn't attack. Even though I never looked back, I know my mom saw it, probably standing at the foot of the stairs of that small porch just behind me, judging by the look on her face. The incident happened the summer of 1993 when I was 14. I never spoke of this to anyone until I met a coworker who believed in Bigfoot and would openly talk about it. I shared my experience with him and have since shared it with a handful of other people. Thank you for letting me share, Jeff. That Doty Creek attack actually is 20 minutes, and I covered the experience or the attack. It's 20 minutes from where Corey Godsey was attacked. Woods all around. Clearly, it was a Dogman attack. And ironically enough, like I said in the upload talking about the attack, the news media just followed like a verbatim script from the state police, which is, if you followed the channel and you know how I look at these attacks to kind of decipher if it is an animal attack or if it is really a cover-up, when all the news media outlets use the police's response to the public, usually means it's a cover-up. So very interesting to get something from that area. I'd like to talk to him a little more. I think I'll send him an email. Maybe I can get him to come on and disguise his voice. Anyway, let's move on. Today's fourth encounter. 3 times in West Michigan have I been visited by this same creature. Starting roughly 19 years ago. I'm 38 years old now. I was in the woods behind one of my friend's homes camping. We were maybe 500 yards away from the house and only took a few steps in the direction of the house to see it on the other side of a cornfield that was used for hay that year. We had a fire started and we're just hanging out, talking, enjoying the summer night. We had gone to Lake Michigan earlier, and a girl we met that lived nearby decided to come with us and hang out, being one of our friends knew her from work. We all agreed she'd get the tent and we'd all sleep by the fire. After an hour or so, we had an amazingly bright light shine down right over us. We all kind of wigged out, got up, but then a strong wind came down on us, and the light slowly moved away. We all decided that it was a police helicopter looking for marijuana plants and saw our heat signatures plus the fire on the thermal cam. We all laid back down, and within maybe 10 minutes, we'd all be back up, and each other's hearts racing. As we lied there, there was this ear-splitting screech. Before any of us could get up, something with considerable weight hit the leaf-littered forest floor. Now all of us standing, a creature that seemed much larger than a wolf ran without walking multiple times around us before we could get a bead on its location. The girl, sorry I forgot your name, was now in the tent doorway, and 2 of my friends had almost teleported into the tent. They moved so fast out of fear. At this point the creature had stopped moving, but we still could not pinpoint where it had stopped. The only view we got from this creature was its gray and white fur, not patterned, but random patches. It moved more like a person on all fours, but way faster than even a wolf on a dead run. We also realized that the helicopter we figured was a dope scope was still nearby. Not far, but we could see stars being blocked out by it moving from west to east, almost like it was strafing. Another 10 adrenaline-filled minutes passed, and we assumed it had left. After another hour of lying there listening and waiting for it to return, we all started falling asleep. In the morning, nothing in the campsite was disturbed, and nothing was damaged. I walked back to the house to get some eggs and some other things for breakfast. Nothing felt off except for the constant feeling of being watched in those woods. But after a long night, I could understand it. On the way back, though, at a different angle of view, I noticed 3 distinct areas in the hay that were pressed down in an almost perfect triangle. Once I got closer, there was a static feeling in the air, and all of my arm hair was standing straight up. As I got closer to the woods, a strong feeling to turn around hit me like a ton of brick. Across the field, maybe 250 yards away, there's a piece of woods that splits the two fields. In that narrow strip of trees stood a cross between a dog and an ape, standing 6 to 7 feet on its hind legs. It looked to be uncomfortable, maybe, as it swayed back and forth, kind of unbalanced. I turned back and headed to the campsite and made breakfast, not saying a thing to the rest of everybody, as heading back to the house would have had us going right by this creature. Roughly 3 hours later, we all did head back to the house, and there was no sighting or any kind of off feelings. The next sighting was 4 years later while hunting family property about 4 miles from the original sighting. Sitting in the woods by myself that evening, I had a group of 4 come in. Now, I would sit in the thicker woods, but had a 270 sighted in at 100 yards. I had 3 lanes that were optimal for that rifle. 2 years before, I got a hard shot on a buck only 75 yards away and threaded a needle with that bullet, so I was very comfortable with any shot. Anyway, the deer were calm and moving slowly, feeding with not a care in the world. After several minutes, the largest doe kept checking behind them like they heard something that I could not. They suddenly jumped all at the same time and even crashed into the trees trying to get away. I still heard nothing and couldn't see anything in that direction. They kept looking. Slowly, I noticed a gray and white-haired creature moving in, down like a canine hunting. When I got the first good look, I immediately recognized it. This time, though, I didn't have any anxiety, no racing heart, and felt completely calm, unlike the first encounter. It was not because I had my rifle. As the first encounter, I had a shotgun that I carried to and from the house. It moved through the woods and almost seemed to be avoiding me, but also the feeling it knew I was there. It walked behind the denser underbrush and would almost leap through my shooting lanes. I had to try and stay hidden and not give myself a shot. Not that I was going to, as I had a strong belief that cryptids and paranormal interactions should be viewed and felt as strong actions as the last resort. It only made a very low growl, as it would have been entering the field 75 yards from me. I waited maybe 30 minutes before heading in for the night, as this creature, yards from me, moved through what would have been what would have kept anything from coming. As I walked back, I never felt the need to rush or even look behind me. Coming into the small grass field we let grow over on the property, there once again was a rush of wind and a dark object in the sky, which I could see better this time as a triangle-shaped object, but had rounded out sides like a triangle that was filed and the sides were about to burst. It moved slowly in the direction the creature moved and then quickly disappeared in the opposite direction, extremely quick. The last time I had an interaction with this creature was only 3 years ago, but now 50 to 55 miles south. I was hunting in Allegan State Game Area only a few days into firearm season. Anyone that knows that area during deer season knows it is filled with hunters from all over. I usually would go to a more difficult area, as the city people wanted to hunt 10 feet from their vehicle and not to have to work for their deer. I was deep in the woods by Swan Creek, and the sun had just started to get up to be able to break through the dense trees. I am used to weird and sometimes unsettling feeling that area gives, but today felt weird. I hadn't seen any other cars on my way to the area, so I felt good about a successful hunt. As minutes went by, I could hear a few deer moving in and was hoping a buck wouldn't be far behind. It was cooler this morning than the last few, and it was easily to see one's breath. I started seeing breath from behind some berry shrubs that I believed to be the deer I had heard and was excited to see them move through. After 10 minutes went by and the breathing kept coming from that same spot, I started thinking maybe there's a buck behind the shrubs and he can smell me or knows something's up. Then the does all booked it through the opening by the shrubs and were full speed through the woods. Shortly behind them was a sight I forgot about, and this time had my heart almost exploding and my anxiety at the max. Without any threat toward me, at least at that moment, my fight or flight was red level, and I was panicking about what to do. I'm around 1,000 yards in the dense forest, with many hollows and ridges to get to my vehicle, and nobody hunting with me to try and get to me. Being the zone I was in, I had my shotgun, but with what I had seen in the past, I wasn't too sure even if I was safe with that. I traveled roughly 150 yards, staying relatively slow so not to make any noise. As I waited by a tree and was listening, I looked behind me. The wood was dead quiet. No birds, no squirrels running about, no wind. Some would think this was great, cause you can hear everything, but those who spent time in the woods know when an apex animal moves in, either the warning calls go off or it goes silent in the woods. I kept moving at more of an increased pace and kept checking my phone for better service to call my in-laws to head out to my area for assistance. I was maybe 200 yards from my vehicle, and I saw what I thought was my true end. On a small mound 75 yards ahead stood a creature on all fours, but this one was different. The fur or hair was brown and black and looked to be bigger, and this time the front half was fully visible, and I could see that it was the same kind of beast I had seen before, half wolf, half ape, and I thought this thing is a test tube baby from a mad scientist. It stared directly at me for 5 minutes, and I was sure the other was somewhere close watching. Then a huge gust of air came through the trees, and the creature ran as if it was being hunted itself. I leaned against the tree by me and sighed and felt a huge relief wash over me, almost like a shower of protection. I opened my eyes and looked up, feeling I would see the same thing as before, but there were clouds and open sky. Then the clouds seemed to distort and get morphed, kind of like when glass has a curve or defect and it distorts your view of objects behind it. I know it was another craft flying above the trees, and this time a different one altogether, or a different mechanicalism to hide being it was daylight. Now comes the real fun part. For about 2 years after that, I had almost ghost-like visits from these creatures. This is really the only way to explain it. They both would show up in my woods while collecting firewood or on a walk with my kids. Now, I never got the same feelings I did the other times. I felt like it was a memory playing in my head, except they moved and did things I didn't physically see them do. One day, I had my dog with me, which I trained to protect the kids and my wife. He even tried to attack me when my ex took him in the woods on the leash. I put on a new hoodie and pulled a hoodie over my face. He came after me, and even calling his name didn't calm him down. Just when he was close enough to smell me, So I know catches everything around him. He was not on his leash this day, and not even 10 feet in. His hair raises and starts to growl, but he seems confused as to why himself. Then I saw both creatures about 20 feet ahead. I could see through them, and they moved as if made of smoke. My dog lunged at one and went right through it, with a dissipating like mist thinning in the morning sun. The other walked behind a tree and never came out the other side. It's been a few years now, and I haven't seen these creatures fully, but keep getting shadows at the edge of my view that look like them, and they'll keep getting closer on both sides. I have the biggest problem with how I can what was physically interaction with what I figured was a cryptid or maybe an other world being now be more paranormal spirit interaction. That seems like a soul following me. Could they have died and I am the only one they didn't get, or are they projecting to me like a calling? Either way, holding it in for years and keeping the other two encounters from the couple of people I still talk to from the original group, I finally figured I'd put the encounters and I'd put the encounters and instances out there and let others give their feelings and take on them. None of them have interfered with my life other than a few close heart attacks from anxiety or the couple sleepless nights right after the encounters. Take as you will, and I'm looking forward to a response. But as going after and the physical interactions to Spectre over the years, I am lost, and I am hoping I can get some answers eventually. I have been through all of my experiences with these physical oddities, and those that seem to be those of long ago, lost between planes and afraid to move on. Thank you for allowing me to share my bizarre interactions with what I don't know. All right, so that experience, going back to Anunnaki, Sumerian text, talking about dog-headed aliens. All of these creatures, like in the writings from Tom Costello, Phil Schneider, Bill Cooper, there are multiple different creatures, these alien entities, whatever the hell you want to call them. And they are not friendly to each other. Some are, some have made pacts, like countries, and some haven't. Some just want to wipe each other out. What if, really quick, what if these creatures are these dog-headed alien-like creatures coming down from these ships that he keeps seeing? Because right before the first time, they had the wind, the light, and then thump, something dropped from wherever and hit the leaf litter, and then that craft gone. If it was not there originally, they would have probably heard it running up to their location. Instead, they just heard thump, like it came from above. Or maybe that craft is the Draco or the Gray hunting these things down. And when they're see-through, like he explained at the end, maybe that's a projection of them to scare him and keep him maybe in check. I don't know. So this information that I'm going to share with you guys came from a lieutenant colonel. And it's the information that I shared with my dad. And after he read this, he shared with me just a couple of things that were actually just as creepy. And I'll get into that right after. The difficulties of American troops during the Vietnam War often were attributed to the skillful tactics of the opponent and the lack of support on the home front. But U.S. forces were hampered by another stealthful enemy in Southeast Asia, vampires. From the beginning, combat in Vietnam's jungles presented new challenges for American troops. The Army, in particular, were trained and equipped for conventional mechanicalized wars such as what they faced in Europe. Vietnam, with its jungle fighting, was a new game. The Viet Cong were masters of guerrilla warfare, during which they would hit troops with surprise attacks and then recede back into the jungle. They also effectively used small villages as bases and caches. In an attempt to turn the tables, the United States Marine Corps developed a Civil Operations and Revolutionary Development Support, or CORDS, program, which assigned small units to patrol the villages. The Marines sought to recruit members of indigenous tribes in the mountainous region of West Vietnam to help them, but the Marines quickly discovered that the tribes were fearful of venturing into certain places because of the presence of Ma, or phantoms. One tribe in particular, the Montagnard, spoke of reanimated corpses that haunted the jungles, drinking the blood and consuming the internal organs of people unlucky enough to cross them paths. United States commanders were quick to dismiss the claims as local superstition. Well, it wasn't superstition at all. Reports of troops encountering with ghouls in the jungle began trickling into the United States command at around 65. At first, the stories involved troops catching glimpses of ghostly figures moving through the jungle. Soldiers who saw these creatures described them as having fangs and black eyes. And then the soldiers began to disappear from their platoon. In one incident, 2 American soldiers rescued one of their comrades from a creature that appeared impervious to bullets. United States commanders initially suspected vampire, as Vietnam was home to 41 species of bat. One person infected in an isolated jungle with no access to the vaccine could quickly spread the affliction throughout the entire community, possibly the entire country. Strangely, though, the undead creatures often appeared in daylight. The feat thought impossible for vampire. One platoon of American troops found an entire village on San Hoi occupied by these creatures despite the daylight hour. The embattled creatures managed to flee into the surrounding jungles. With troop morale plummeting and the Viet Cong making gains, top army brass brought several high-ranking ABC agents to Saigon in the fall of '66 for a consultation. The Army helicoptered the agents out to the village of San Hoi, scene of the daytime battle between United States troops and these ghouls. Once the agents noticed that there's a type of canopy jungle was filtering almost all of the sunlight before it reached the ground. They speculated that this filtering was enabling these creatures to operate in daytime. In a report, President Lyndon B. Johnson, the agents concluded that eliminating the vampires would be virtually impossible in Vietnam's jungle setting. When Johnson read the conclusion, he famously said, "If the jungle's a problem, then let's get rid of the damn jungle." Thus began the infamous Vietnam herbicidal warfare program. The military chose a defoliant known as Agent Orange and sprayed 20 million gallons of it over 6 million acres of the jungle. Once the canopy was denuded, troops went into suspected villages with flamethrowers to exterminate any remaining vampire. The program was successful in clearing several large packs of these creatures from the mountainous regions of Vietnam. However, many American soldiers and their Montagnard allies remained unwilling to go into the jungle villages. As a result, the Marine Corps abandoned the Cord program in '68 and returned to policy almost indigenous from the armies. The Vietnam jungles were left to the Viet Cong, the indigenous tribes, and the vampire. After my dad read that, he had told me, we talked a little bit about what he did and being part of the Brownwater Navy, traveling through these just crazy rivers through Vietnam. He had told me once about firing upon what he thought were Bigfoot, but smaller than a Bigfoot, about a little larger than a human, which would be rock apes. And then, hey bud. And then he had said, after reading this article, he kind of paused and he said, holy shit. One night they were going through, and he said they noticed about 5 or 6 villagers. They weren't Viet Cong, they weren't American, and they weren't our ally in Vietnam. But there was these villagers that were hung from these trees that no human could climb. Like, the branches extended over the water, and they were kind of hung by their arms 60 feet or whatever, 70 feet above the floor of the jungle, the water. On these branches that, like, literally no one could hang. They found it impossible because they were like, how the hell did anyone... First and foremost, why would anyone do this? And because they were splayed open and just hanging in these branches. And they couldn't figure out how. And my dad, said, we thought, well, they're small. The Viet Cong are smaller than us. Maybe they shimmied their way up one of these trees and whatnot. And about a week later, they had never forgotten about it. They had gone to somewhere and they met one of these tunnel rat guys who was really small, probably no bigger than 120 pounds, soaking wet. And they said, hey, can you shimmy one of these trees and crawl out through the branch? And these trees that they had this guy do it in were almost identical to what these villagers were hanging splayed open. And he got like halfway up and the tree snapped, or, the branch snapped, or the branch bent. And, he's like, I can't get up there. He goes, I get like a third of the way up and I'm too heavy. That got everyone thinking, what the hell is out in those woods? So that jungle that is capable of doing what we just saw. And why were they just like a deer, not hanging like a deer, but splayed open like a deer after hunting season, So my dad really said, that shit makes a lot of sense. Print me out a copy of that so I can have it, please. And I said, yeah, immediately. I went home, quickly printed one out for him and brought it back to him. And hopefully the gentleman that shared this, I did email him and I said, listen, my dad really wants to talk to you. Hopefully he sends me an email and he can touch bases with Big Jim, because it'd be some valuable information right there. In tonight's final encounter, my wife and I were driving down a very windy road at around 10 p.m. after dropping a friend off. This is El Dorado County, California. A very wooded area, and properties are spread far apart. This happened during a full moon in February. It was very dark and secluded, but there was the moonlight. While approaching the sharpest turn on the road, I began slowing down to approach the almost 180-degree turn. There were no homes nearby, just a gate entrance to someone's unkept wooded property. I noticed while talking to my wife something moving across the road ahead where the turn was to be made. My first thought was that there is dust from a car that had made the turn ahead of us, but that made no sense because we were the only ones on that road up and back down again. What I saw was upwards to 20 feet, possibly even 30 feet ahead of us. This tall, very skinny, and had this kind of bronze luminescent of its own. I thought it was the dust of my headlights ahead, but it formed into this tall, slender, almost ovular shape as it passed over the road. And as it got to the roadside, entered the tree line heading into the mountainside, I realized a very large, skinny leg stepped forth from the shape and stepped into the woods. It almost looked like golden smoke, but with a certain type and density to it. Needless to say, as soon as I realized I was witnessing something very unnatural, I started to say, "Did you see that?" My wife cut me off by saying, "You saw it too?" All of my hair stood on end, and I could feel the charge of the air of an intense energy, even with the windows up and the heater on. I became very afraid but kept driving down that mountain because I knew we had both just witnessed something we probably should not have. I pulled off to the side of the road about half a mile away to discuss specifically what we had just seen. Our descriptions match. I pulled off the road about a half a mile away to discuss exactly what we had seen, or specifically what we had seen. Our descriptions matched to a T, and had very negative paranormal experience as a teenager. So when she demanded we go back, I was hesitant. But finally curiosity got the best and we returned to the place we saw this thing. I'm still not sure if what I saw was a cryptid or an alien or some type of spirit, but I can say it was inhuman and its sheer size made it frightening. I parked in the road with my headlights shining up the hillside in the direction I was traveling. Nothing was there. We stood in the dark for 15 minutes with the truck off, snapping photos, but captured nothing. I'm very interested to hear anyone's theories. Alright folks, there you have it. I hope you all enjoyed today's upload as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I'd like to thank you all for supporting this channel. It is your support that helps the channel to continue to grow and go, and what gives us all a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free. Everyone is simply treated with the respect that we deserve. Please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and our friends. These creatures are real. These events have happened. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless you all.